With Elite Dangerous, we've not been hung up on being true to the original Elite or to Frontier. What the priority has been to make a great game.
People have this idea of what Elite should be, and trying to match that idea is going to be fun.
I see Elite Dangerous as the next step in that franchise, which kind of rolls in the best bits of all those games and then adds some more of its own as well.
The original Elite in some ways was more accessible, apart from docking, of course, and where the follow-ons, they built the world in greater detail, and also mapping it to our own galaxy was genius. You know, it makes you think that you're actually in the future and part of a world that you know exists.
Obviously, the original games have been big influences, but I've been a science fiction fan for a very long time, and I've always liked the sort of the harder end of science fiction, where there's a lot more sort of justification behind the way things happen.
You've got like the detail that you bring in. You just try and imagine what a world could be like in 1,000 years' time, and that's not as easy as you might think. There's things that you think might go easily, like nanotechnology or whatever, but it may not turn out. So we've actually got quite a dark world, which I think is quite nice. I'm not a fan of utopia-based science fiction in the future.
A lot of it was in the imagination, and now we're having to fulfill that in a lot of detail, and there's a lot of work behind that.
We've got a lot of iconic shapes to work from in those original games, so being able to fill out the details in those shapes is a lot of fun, but also it's going to mean a lot to anybody who has played the previous games.
I think the challenge for us is to take that wireframe and then keep the iconic shape, keep the design, but then fill the gaps that were left behind. So what would be filled with the player's imagination before, we've got to take that load away, and we've got to fill the gaps with content and with things that would be functional and make sense.
Obviously we take quite a lot of influence from different places, but we then put our own spin on things to make it slightly a bit different, something a bit cooler.
When you look at it, it looks like, hey, that looks like a Cobra Mark III, or that looks like a Sidewinder, but also, right, we've got these flaps and these fins and these heat vents and these engines, and they all work together and look like it's a real spaceship. You know, it's not just a wireframe anymore, it's actually becoming tangible.
A lot of the influences are for the muzzle flashes, the impact effects, rather than trying to make them all look the same. We want to mix it up a bit, make them all look a bit different, especially the bigger weapons like the sort of plasma guns. We want them to look a bit cooler, so we try and do something a bit different with those.
I think the hardest part of bringing the original Elite up to date was trying to create fully immersive environments. Whether that be the cockpits, the exteriors of the ships, whether that be the asteroids or the planets, there's a huge amount of work that goes into every element.
I think one of the big differences is bringing the cockpit into the world. It's something that you can feel like you're almost inside of.
When we make the cockpits, we're trying to bear in mind any future changes that might take place, and that could be the implementation of a secondary pilot, or in some cases a tertiary pilot. So we need to make sure that we leave a physical space that's going to enable somebody to sit in that seat.
So in Elite Dangerous we've got 400 billion systems, and for us making sure that there's something exciting, something thrilling, something dangerous, something interesting to do in each of those systems is a real priority.
Creating something with the scope of the galaxy is an enormous task in itself, and we're relying on procedural techniques to obviously realise that. But making those techniques look good as well as be accurate, I think is a big challenge.
Elite is such a completely different game from the games that we've done in the past. I mean, our earlier games have quite often been nice static landscapes with one sunlight shining down on them, and then we began this project and everything moves, everything travels in different directions, and everything has about 300 lights on it.
Planets look more like you'd imagine them to be the surface of stars. We're actually modelling those, and you can see up close all the plasma jets and all the richness that's going on there.
The technology now that we have available to us is so much more powerful that it can be kind of difficult to know where to stop.
There's missions, there's simulations going on, and things change in response to your actions. So I think it's just a much deeper and richer world.
Things like the docking procedure, they now have more depth. The player goes inside the station, they see what's going on behind the scenes, where previously we could only show entrances and exits of the stations. Our systems can have more complex relations with each other than they ever could before. We can have more evocative trade goods. We can really sort of just dial up the whole experience for the player.
One of the bigger things that I've worked on recently has been hyperspace. That was really good fun to work with. Had a lot of creative freedom with that.
The fact that you can go anywhere in space, any point in a system, and you can look at a planet from any angle. The speeds required for that create a lot of interesting challenges for us in trying to maintain the dogfighting gameplay, the combat gameplay of the original, and balancing that against the ability to travel anywhere. It's really allowed us to keep the core of the game while opening up the galaxy.
Getting the feel of the combat right so that it feels great, and it isn't the sort of thing where you immediately, by having a bigger ship, you're immediately going to win a combat. All of that sort of thing, the detail, the turn rates, how heavy a ship should feel, how light.
One of the big challenges that we've had is doing great combat in an empty space. Other games can use the environment and gravity to create the sort of gameplay limitations that they need, whereas we've had to use the flight model and the ships to essentially create those interesting gameplay limitations.
Making sure that we don't get carried away when we're coming up with something for gameplay purposes. It's a game about science fiction, but there has to be science, there has to be reality there. So we can't just sort of create a good idea because it's good gameplay. Sometimes it has to make sense within the fiction of the world as well.
People think, oh yes, well science, that's a sort of fixed thing, but actually there are lots of theories and they conflict in lots of places, so it's trying to find a way forward, which I think is the most accurate sort of interpretation of some of the results we've seen. And it's a process that I've thoroughly enjoyed.
One of the bones of contention in any space game is the idea of no sound in space.
One creative dilemma we faced with sound design regularly is this whole scientific accuracy and realism versus just making the game sound cool.
As a creative designer, I don't really want to think about that particular part of science.
And quite often those two just are exactly the same thing, it's beautiful, but quite often they are totally pulling in different directions and we have to make a choice.
So we've tried to be as realistic as we can where we can, but we've had to enhance certain aspects of gameplay with audio. We felt that to be totally necessary, just to inform the player of what's going on more than anything else. And we found it to increase immersion considerably.
There's a lot of sci-fi sound design cliches out there. For example, we all think we know what a laser gun should sound like or what a spaceship engine should sound like, and yet none of us have actually heard those sounds.
If there's any influence that we always try and stick to, it's try finding a different way to do the same thing and create our own specific universe.
So what we've tried to do is carve out our own style and try and navigate around some of these preconceptions and try and do our own thing as much as we can.
Our lead audio, Joe, says, try and think of something original. Don't do a beep or a bleep for a GUI element, create something new.
We weren't composing for cutscenes and specific scenes. It's about moods and changing emotions and describing the beauty of space and the mystery of space.
The biggest difference with Elite Dangerous, I think, is the fact that we're multiplayer, the fact that we're online, and it enriches the gameplay so much to be able to go on adventures with a friend, to meet people that are real people, to actually talk to them.
I think there's loads of potential for co-op in the game. I think that should be something that everybody should explore. When we were testing the voice comms, Joe and I had a great session just attacking NPCs. With voice comms, it was just so much fun. And you could just see the scope for having wingmen and going off and enjoying adventures together is huge.
For me, the most exciting thing with Elite Dangerous is the fact that the galaxy is real. The fact that you look at the night sky, the real night sky outside, and it matches the game as close as we can, that every single dot you can see is a star that you can visit.
The coolest part of Elite Dangerous has got to be just how vast the game is and how small you as a player are. You're like a speck of dust floating in the universe. It's incredible.
And it's really brought home to me how small we all are and how massive space is. And the distance between planets in the game and the scale of the universe is accurately modelled, and it's just mind-blowing, the distances and the time it takes to travel.
There are a lot of things about it that amaze me, but the more I learn, the more sort of science we put into it, which I know doesn't matter to a lot of people. It matters a lot to me, but it's that richness, that feeling that I'm exploring something real. And then when I look back at a constellation in which the sun is one of the little dots, that's real, and that's what you really would see from that distant system.
For me, it's the stuff that's just coming in at the moment, and that's the exploration. I love the idea of just heading out from human space out into the galaxy and seeing what we'll find.
My favourite part of Elite Dangerous at the moment is the flight simulation, my connection with my ship, and the detail in which you can go into your ship and everything that comes with it, so the docking, requesting, and that whole part of it, because I come from flight sims, and so that really ticks all my boxes. I really like that.
The feeling of actually being present in your ship, that it's a real object that you're operating, and not just moving a reticle over a target.
I think for me it has to be the boost. It's been a year and I still haven't got over just how good a job the audio guys did with that.
The coolest part has been the audio so far, particularly in stations, things like that, having the voices echoing off the walls and just the sounds as you go through the docking port, things like that. I think as well the art team's done an incredible job just making the galaxy a beautiful place.
The galaxy map is a really, really cool part of Elite. Being able to see the trade routes and everything if you have a mission that you're currently involved in, being able to select all the elements that are related to that mission and find out where trade routes are going on. It's such a fantastic bit of design and code and art that's all come together. It really is quite mind-blowing when you see it for the first time.
The coolest part of Elite Dangerous is when you fire out a heatsink and all your glass frosts up.
So it gives you that that ability to have a stealth type of experience, which is really sort of visceral. It encloses you in that cockpit. You're there literally sort of hiding in the vastness of space, and that's the thing. It brings this whole vast galaxy centered down on you and the pit of your stomach and the feeling as you're sneaking around. I think that's amazing.
The coolest part of Elite Dangerous for me is playing it on Oculus Rift. Just the experience of sitting in the cockpit and seeing space all around you. It's just a new world of gaming, really.
When I put the Rift headset on for the first time, I was absolutely amazed. It didn't matter that it wasn't high definition, it wasn't one of the later versions of the kit, it was just an amazing immersive experience. I was in the Sidewinder, and looking all around me I could see everything that was around the chair, all the plates on the floor. Also the handrail, the grab rail was right in front of me, and it really makes you want to just reach out and touch it.
When we were first testing Super Cruise, and we had a planetary system with rings, and going in Super Cruise and you're flying in, and then as you got closer, it wasn't just a texture, it wasn't anything, you could see actual asteroids, you could fly in, and then I'm in an asteroid field. That, for me, that was like a pivotal, this is amazing!
Yeah, we get to play with spaceships. What else do you want to say about this? With some people that really love spaceships as well, so everybody's like...
Making Elite Dangerous has been fantastic for us. It's been a very enjoyable experience, but I think probably the most important thing is all the support we've had from people sort of outside the company as well as the people here.
I love the relationship we have between the developers and the backers. It's great getting feedback from them and ideas from them. It pushes us to do a better job. It gives us ideas.
People who've come as backers have been very supportive, Elite ambassadors, all of the people who have been evangelising the game on forums, playing it, people in the DDF, the book authors, all of the people who have helped us have been really amazing. The support the game has been getting around the world is absolutely fantastic. So a big thank you from me and from all of the team here for making this happen. It's a fantastic opportunity. As you can see, we're doing our absolute best to make it as good as we can. We're not going to stop when we release the game. There are a lot of exciting things we'll do in the future as well. So a big thank you from me and from everyone here.